I grew up in a town called Salina, Kansas. Salina is right in the middle of the state of Kansas, a town of about 30,000 people. And as will unfold during this next hour and a half, my mother was a huge impact in my life. And when I was 13, I started to caddy. And she drove me up, and the first day she drove me up, you had to go up the hill to the country club. And so we got up to the top of the hill and turned left, and she said, "Now, Michael, be sure that you walk out in front of the golfer. Be sure that you always call them Mr. or Mrs. And be sure that you always say thank you to them many times, because thank you are two of the most important words that you can have." So I would begin today by saying thank you. The first person I want to thank, and I asked him 10 times if he was going to be in here, and he said yes, is Hero. And he's not back there.
He's frozen.
He's frozen.
He's just been terrific. I have never, in 40 years of doing these things, I have never used a PowerPoint. Never. I'm a flip chart guy. I've never spoken in front of this many people. I usually have about 30 to 50 people in a conference, and I've got a flip chart. So I'm going to have to look on there to see what they are. I've talked to the guys back there. I'm just going to yell, change the slide. And I saw all these people yesterday with their cameras taking pictures of the slides. There's not going to be anything on there to take a picture of. I mean, they're very unprofessional. But I want to start off with thank you. And so when Hero comes in, hopefully maybe he's giving the whole thing a hop, but another person I want to thank is Kate Kingston. Kate sent out a deal that the presenters were supposed to fill in all this stuff, and you'll be getting it. And I wanted to share with all of you, you're going to get an email after this thing, and it's going to have, I put in there how you measure an aging company and a growing company, how you measure teams that are on the way up, teams on the way down, and the difference between management and leadership. And I hope I'm just take it and do with it whatever you'd like to do with it. But it's really material that all my people use. And so I wanted to, and Kate had me send that, and I think I put 3 books or something that I've read. I don't read a lot of books. I read a lot of dirty novels. I don't have too many, but I haven't had it. So I put in some business books, and I hope that you'll look at that material when it comes. So I want to thank Kate. We always thank Mary, who got her award last night, and Josie. They helped me out a lot. I want to thank Jenny Fisher and John Cookta. They really encouraged me to do this, and I respect both of them. I consider both of them good friends, and they really, I really do get nervous about these things, and they both said, no, you got to do this. This is a good deal. So I begin by saying thank you to all of them. I say thank you to Mike Stramalio, and I'm going to talk about Mike Stramalio and when we met in 1991. This is not going to be a reminiscing of the last 40 years of my life, okay? I'm going to get into some other things, but I'll mention, but I say thank you, Mike, for the invitation. And I thank all of you, because for the next hour and a half, we're going to be on a journey together. And the way this thing's going to work is I'm going to start off with some more philosophical things, and then I'm going to get into the weeds, okay? All I've done for the last 40 years, or 38 years, whatever it is, although I'm still seeming to do it, this thing, retirement, I'm not sure what it is really, but all I do all day long, and I love it, is I talk with owners, VPs of service, VPs of sales, And hello, hero. And let's give him a round of applause. He put all these slides together for me. I had no idea what to do, and he did all of that for me. He's one of the most gracious people I've ever worked with. Anyway, so I go out with service techs and spend days with, and I never spend a whole day. I spend a half a day with them. Usually we go and we get their donuts and coffee at 10:20, and then we have lunch. And that's what I do. I'm involved in copier companies, and I want to be very clear. Mike said, you know, yeah, I've worked in, you all know the deal. At POA, when I started with them, they were 34 million. Today they're 400 or something. That's not because of me. That's because it always goes to the person that executes. You can have all these consultants running around. I have plenty of clients that were started out at maybe 5 or 6 and today are 16 or 17, and they have quality companies. And we've met their needs. So I don't want to have some fictitious idea here that I've got some magic pill that's going to take you to 200 million or something. But we have, I think there's some processes that can assist you in building a quality organization. So anyway, I really thank all of you for being here. There's people have been very gracious making some comments, and I hope that I don't let you all down. I met Mike in 1991. And I didn't meet him, he called me. And John Cook had been puking in his ear that I needed to come and speak at a deal called Minfo. I don't know how many of you remember Minfo, but it was really it was put on by Minolta, and it was really one of the first dealer type meetings. I mean, nobody else was doing that. And Strumalio dreamt this up or whatever, and he called me, and we had to have about 4 or 5 phone calls. All I wanted was $5,000, you know, and you would have thought I was asking for 50 or something. And we went back, oh, I've got a check with so-and-so, oh, I've got it. And so finally I got $5,000, and I came out, and we had, he had me do an opening deal for about 30 minutes, and I was on a stage, and that's the only other time I've spoken to a big group, the only other time. And the rest of them were workshops. And Mike, the thing that has always impressed me about Mike is he's really committed to bringing people together and sharing ideas. I mean, that, half the time I can't figure out what he's doing. I mean, I kind of have kept up with his career, and he kind of reinvents himself doing different, but they all have one common ingredient. They're assisting our industry. They're all helping our industry. So I went to the Menfo thing, and I had to laugh when I saw these chairs. I was on a panel, and there were 4 chairs. We'll say these 4, we'll use these 4. And we were in a breakout group, and so there was only about 50 people in the room. And they'd ask questions. There were 4 consultants. And I was in chair number 4. And I was sitting down here, and everybody, the other consultants were very well known. And they'd ask them questions, you know, what do you think of this, and what do you think of that? And the last question that came up was, this was 1991, so the mega dealers were just coming into play. And Alco Standard and Hillman and Erskine House and all these people were coming in. So they asked, what do you guys think about the mega dealers? How should we feel about them? Panelist number 1 says, you know, if a mega dealer wants to buy a company in your city, you better sell to them, because they're going to take this thing over. And the mega dealers are really, they know how to do it. And you can really, and they pay well, so you need to do it. Okay? Panelist number 2. Well, I agree with panelist number 1. He said, these mega dealers, they really know this business. They have resources that you all just don't have. And if you don't go with them, somebody in you said he will, and you'll be in trouble. Okay. Panelist number 3. Well, I agree with the other 2. I mean, you gotta be really afraid of these mega dealers. They're gonna come in and they're gonna take this town over, and you'll really be in trouble. So then he came down here and everybody kept, nobody asked me. I mean, I first of all, they don't know if my name's Riordan or you know, they can't figure out. So somebody finally says, well, Mr. Riordan, how do you feel about it? And I said, well, here's what I believe in my heart. I believe in my heart that if you recruit the best players and you select them and then you develop them and develop them and develop them and then you manage them and hold them accountable and problem solve and then create a fun, dynamic, exciting environment, I'm not afraid of the mega dealers or anybody else. You'll be just fine. And I believed that in 1991. And after being in this industry for 38 or 39 or whatever, how many it is years, I believe that today. People will ask me, well, what do you think about 10 years from now? I don't know what's going to happen in 10 years from now. You know, now most of my clients have transferred in, and by the way, I say my clients, they're my former clients, okay? I'm not getting checks from anybody, so they're former. But I'm going to say my clients. My clients, they're all into IT. I've got one that has built it up in 9 years to 50 million. I've got another one that, and not because of me, it's because everything goes to the person that executes. You can have all the consultants running around talking about all these things, but if you don't execute, nothing happens. Famous quote of John Wooden, and it shows I'm getting old. A lot of people don't know who John Wooden is anymore. But John Wooden made the comment, everything goes to the person that executes. And so we bring different ideas, get groups together to talk about it. But I have a lot of clients that are struggling with the IT thing, and they're in there at about, somewhere about 8 or 9 million, and they're making the conversion, and you know, we'll see what happens. But I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen. But I know this, if I've got the quality team, if I've got a great team, if I've got the best players on my team, then bring it on. Bring on the future. If it's just me by myself, if I'm just the entrepreneur that's still king, then I better be scared, because things are happening too fast and we need the dynamics of team. And so that's my Minfo story. Minfo, I always thought it was one of the best things, best groups they ever had, but I always remember that meeting, how we went along and I stood up, and I say that to you today, my friends. You get the best people, the best players, train them, develop them, manage them, motivate them, you'll be just fine. So, change the slide. Now, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to talk some theory, and then I'm going to get in the weeds. Building a quality organization. To build a quality organization, you got to do, in my opinion, a couple things. You got to decide, do you want to have a lifestyle company, or do you want to pay all of the price, emotional, financial, psychological, of building an organization? And a lifestyle company, you've got to have good people in the lifestyle company too. But if you're going to build an organization, that's when you're going to start getting up to the 40, the 50, the 60 million. And see, there's a lot. I'm going to say something. This is driving me crazy. I'm going to say something. No, I'm not going to say nothing. I'm going to say something that really is kind of blasphemy. Have y'all heard this saying? You're either green and growing or ripe and rotten or something. Man, I know so many good copier dealers that are about 20 million, making a couple $1,000,000 a year, not having to put up with all the HR problems, not having to put up with all the banking problems. They're really happy people. They've got a lifestyle company. Their kids are going to nice colleges. They're going down. They have a boat. I mean, and they might have even had a pool and salt. But anyway, but you know, I think it's having a quality company. And if you're 20 million and have a quality company and your needs are being met and your kids are happy and you're a happy person, wow, that's just fine. That's a lifestyle company. And I mean, what did most of us start out as? Didn't many of us start off as copier salesmen? And my gosh, we thought if we ever made $60,000 in a year, we were hot stuff. Now we're sitting in here and I've got a whole room of all millionaires. Everybody in here is a millionaire. And we're drinking Glenlivet Scotch. We used to drink Pabst Blue Ribbon beer. You know, oh, I forgot to thank two people too. Thank you, Rob, for following me around, and thank you, Grant, for following me there. So anyway, so you have to make a decision. Are we going to have a lifestyle company, and when we go to BPCA or CDA or ECS, and we hear somebody that's got a $70 million company, and they're doing this and they're doing that, and we're at 15 million, so we feel kind of bad, and we go home and beat up on our people for a couple days because we're not getting that same margin. I just share with you, my friends, make a decision. A lifestyle company isn't that bad. It isn't anything to be embarrassed about. Now, the other option is that you go into organizational development, and you have to have a plan for that. And when you start talking about getting up to 40, 50, 60, 70 million, excuse me, you're going to get into all sorts of other issues. I mean, now there isn't the loyalty. Now there isn't the family feeling, folks. I mean, you can have a family feeling maybe up to 100 million, maybe if you're really good, but that family feeling goes away. And if that's part of your gig, then you might not want to go to 70 or 80 million. But it's up to you to make that decision. Okay, change the slide. So, culture trumps all. Now, culture, if you're going to have a family-owned business and a lifestyle company, you're going to have one culture. If you're going to come in and you're going to have more of a organization, a bigger organization, you're going to have a different culture. And cultures change. The first thing you do, and I really want to share, I'm beginning to work now. Okay, I've kind of been rambling. I'm beginning to work now. If you're going to have a culture, you have to be in control of that. Cultures don't just happen. And if you don't like your culture, look in the mirror, because it's because of you. If people aren't showing up on time and everything, don't blame those people. Look at you. Look in the mirror. And so I recommend, and I've had a lot of clients do this, to sit down and write out, what do you value? What do you value in life? What do you and your spouse value, or your live-in, or whatever you have going on? What do you value in life? What do you value? And then what are your goals? What are your goals? Are your goals really to be 100 million? I mean, and take on all of the challenges of that? You know, it's almost blasphemy not say that, but if your goals, do you want to be worth $9 million? Do you want to be worth $20 million? What are your goals? What are your family goals? And so sit down, take an exercise, go walk on a beach, talk with your spouse, figure it out. What do we value and what are our goals? What is this whole thing about? And I know everybody turns in a budget and we turn in our goals at the beginning of the year and the teams turn them into me and all this. Is that really, that's a budget. That's not going inside of your gut and saying, who am I and what am I about? Then after you get your goals put down, you find in cultures, there's two types of cultures. You either have an over-led culture and under-managed, or an over-managed, under-led. So you need to know your own style. Are you more of a manager type? Or are you more of a leadership type? And if you're more of a leadership type, then you're going to want to surround yourself with some management types. I had a great story. I had a client for a long time, and he was a great leader, and he was a great motivator. And he had about 75 people in the room. And they were doing about 15 million or something, I don't know. And he gets up in front of him. The guy could stem wind anybody. And he's up and he spit. And he got up and he was going, okay, now, first of all, he asked me, I had put together kind of an overlay thing for him and written an outline for him. He said, I want you to write the outline. You're not as good a speaker as I am, so I'm going to give the speech. But you give me an outline. So he gets the outline, and he starts going along, and then you could just see him change, and he clicked, and spit started coming out, and he started saying, he says, and it used very profound language, F-bombs everywhere, and he starts going like this, and he says, okay, we're going to be 50 million. We're going to be 50 million in 3 years. Now they were like 15 million or 10. We're going to be 50 million, and all of you, this meeting's over. Get up and go out there. I want the service managers to go out there. I want the sales managers to be selling, the service managers to be fixing. I want the computer to get out there. And everybody in the room jumps up and charges out. And I went up and I said to him, Mike, how are you going to do that? What's the plan? He says, oh, hell, I don't know. He says, this is a lot of fun. Isn't this fun? That is overmanaged, overled, undermanaged. Then you have other people that have all the numbers. Man, they have every matrix you can ever imagine. And they're comparing matrix, and they sit in their office all day long looking at matrix. Everybody in the company kind of just goes through it. So identify, are you an overled company and undermanaged? Or are you an overmanaged company underled? And you're one or the other. There isn't an in-between unless you've really perfected something. We'd like to get to where you've got the balance. And so surround yourself with the opposite of what you are. Surround yourself the opposite of what you are. So, and I gotta look at these things because I don't know. Branding. Brand your culture. I look over here. Barry Simon has done a tremendous job branding his culture, creating raving fans. And you walk into his company and everybody talks about creating raving fans. He signs his letters to you. You're a raving fan. I think, oh yeah, right. He has created that culture. Probably, and Mike, for a speaker next year, I tell you who's done the best branding job that I have witnessed, I'm sure other people have, is John Lowry up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. John, and what he did is he got his 10 key people together, and they came up with 12 words that had it. And man, they lived that. Now, if you're going to brand your company and you're going to have that, then you got to follow through on it. You got to be consistent. It's the old deal of, we really care about customers. Our customers always, it's so important. And then somebody comes in and says, well, you know, they want them. Oh, that bitch. You know, wait a minute. What's all this? Customers are, we value our employees. We value our employees. And then you just go out and beat them. I mean, so one of the things is get a brand and get your key people. Maybe you only have 4 key people. Sit down, get some words that you can use. I know more words about POA than all of you've ever thought of. Okay, but they had an exercise. They brought in 40 people, and they called out, and they've got 10 words. And man, they live those 10 words. They live them. And as we say out there, I'll drink to that. But brand it, get the branding. Now, the other thing I want to say about culture, and you can spend a whole day on culture. I mean, culture trumps all, man. Culture's where it all is. But I'm going to warn you about something that I don't hear people talk about, and that's subcultures. In every culture, in every company, there's a subculture. There's a group of people out there that aren't buying into your program. And it's kind of like when you get a new employee, if you have the process to where they come in and they talk with you and meet the president and then they go out, then somebody slinks up to them and say, hey, I saw you were in talking to the president. Oh, this is a great company. Hey, listen, I'll buy you lunch. Let's go and have lunch. And then after about, you know, when the hamburgers come or whatever, then they say, you know, I want to be honest with you. You know, whenever anybody says, I want to be honest with you, you better look out. They're coming after you. I want to be honest with you. Here's the rest of the story about this place. And that's the subculture. It's like when you walk into the lunchroom and you hear all the, and then you walk into the lunchroom and it's dead quiet. You got a subculture, folks. You got a subculture. And the way you get around the subculture is not by you solving the problems, it's by having their direct manager be aware of it, and the direct manager, and it's a process. You don't change somebody being in a subculture. You don't go in and tell them, hey, you better be part of the team. I don't think you're part of the team. You know, you're too negative. That ain't going to change anything. They're going to go, yeah, right. And then they're going to go out and subculture you some more. So you got to get your managers on board and bring them along. And I think it's probably a 4 to 6 month transformation to actually bring somebody that's not part of the culture into the culture. So go home and identify your subcultures. Go home and identify your subcultures. Okay, change the slide there. Okay, I want to talk about the Johnson model for a minute. In my opinion, the most significant person in our industry in the last 50 years is Tom Johnson. Because Tom Johnson developed the Johnson model, and he was nice enough that he would share it with everybody. I mean, he got the people that he'd buy, but he'd say, hey, you can try this, use the Johnson, you know, try these numbers, and that'll help you, and then maybe I'll buy you in 2 or 3 years. And the Johnson model changed the game. Because up until 1990, when we had a meeting like this, what did everybody sit around and talk about? We talked about 2 things, our sales and how many people we had. Hey, we're 18 million. Hey, I have 90 employees. And then the Johnson model came into life. And then people started saying, hey, we're a 12% company, you know. we got operating income of 15% or something. Most of the people upped it a little bit more than they were, but that's okay. But he changed the whole model. He changed the whole game. Now I want to comment about the Johnson model. It is my observation working with my clients is too many of us know just one number and we don't know how they all interact. And they pick out a number, and that number, if it's not like if you go to a meeting like this and you hear somebody else has that number, I go home and whack around on people. Well, they're doing this number, now we got to get to that number. And maybe that number is this way because 3 other numbers are. So my recommendation is, and I have no connection with them, I know Hay and Johnson run these BTA meetings on the model. Go to that about 2 or 3 times and you might have it down. If I was a Copier dealership, I'd call up Todd Johnson. And I'd say, Todd, I know you don't want to travel. I know you like to do things virtually. But I'll tell you what, I want you to meet with my executive team once a month, and I'll pay you $10,000 for the year, or $20,000. Makes no difference what you pay him because it's going to save you so much money. But don't you just learn the model, get your people to learn the model. That's one of the biggest gaps. The people don't know. We know the model. The model says. And then they don't understand it. So teach your people the model. Teach them to where they understand what all the different factors are. And then learn how one number affects another number. I've seen such profound changes in my clients when they really, really, really understood the model. When they understood how that number affected this number. And maybe you all understand that, I don't know. But I meet a lot of people that don't. Okay? Let's change it again. Now I'm going to work. This is almost going to be a workshop. Okay? This is going to be nitty-gritty stuff. You might not agree with me, and that's fine. I'm just sharing with you what I've done with a lot of people that, and nobody uses all my stuff. You know, I always say if they use 50% of it, they're 100% ahead of their competition. But there's 5 processes: recruit, select, train, manage, and motivate. Switch it, change it. Let's talk about recruiting. Now, I'm retired, and I still hear people talking about, hey man, we just can't get it by getting good people. We can't find good people. Man, they're just not out there. Oh, yeah. Now, just to sound like an old man, I've been listening to that for 40 years. When the economy's good, they can't find them. When it's bad, they can't find them. You know, and so that doesn't surprise me. But I'm going to share with you some tried and true ways to recruit. The first one I have is centers of influence. Go home, and I'm working now. I mean, I have such a big ego. I'm not here to entertain. I'm trying to share stuff with you that you can take home and use. Go home, sit down with your best team members and say, hey, look, do you know anybody that not looking for a job? I'm not looking for somebody that's looking for a job. That's happy. But they're a quality person and they'd be part of our team. And they all know people. They all flock together, especially the millennials. The millennials, their whole thing, I mean, I won't mention, there's a guy in this room that his son is going to kind of one of the inferior universities in the country, KU, Kansas University. But it's, and he's living with 2 women. And it's all fine, you know. I mean, being an old man, I can do it. But that's not the case, man. The millennials, they flock together. Quality people flock together. That's who they run with. You become who you associate with. So they flock together. They all run together. Go home and talk to your team members. I'll guarantee you, one of the goals that I always had for my clients, I've had some attain it, some to have 50% of your client, 50% of the people you hire are coming from your team members. And if they really love your place, they'll be out telling people about it. Think about it. If they really love, I mean, when you were 10 people in your company, you were passing out your card to waitresses and everything, and all the people were, hey, you got to come over. Well, when you get to be 100 people, it's the same game. It's the same game. Get your team members. The next people that know so many people are customers. Our customers know so many people. Ask your customer, not somebody else, who's the best person that's in here taking care of your phone system? To come sell copiers. You know, the only people that really have a hang up about selling copiers are copier people. I mean, it really interests me. It really, I have a grandson that's junior in high school, and I associate with a lot of college kids. And it's still the magic. You say, hey, you can come over here and make this kind of money. You come over here and you have this kind of opportunity. You come over here and join our family, and we're a family, and we're going to help you achieve your dreams. Man, that's the story. That's the story. And so your customers can give you more names than you ever thought of, especially ones that you have a great relationship with. You go out and you say, hey, I got a problem. I need some more people. Who's somebody good calling on you? So anyway, and then as far as using recruiters, if you're 20 million and you've got a recruiter, that's just fine. I personally don't think you need them until maybe you get up to the 60, 70, 80 million mark. But I know some smaller companies are going to that because we're desperate. We can't get people. And yesterday they talked about TikTok and some of those things. Use all that stuff. Use everything available to you. But I share with you, these are really worthwhile. Now, comebackers. When COVID hit, a lot of companies went out and paid a bounty to steal our people. And this isn't just from the copier industry. When I talk to other businessmen in Kansas City, they're all saying the same thing. We lost so many people, and now, a year later, they're ready to come back. They want to come back because they got sold a bill of goods. So if somebody leaves your company and you like them, stay up with them. Keep up with them. I just heard a story. I mean, now, the guy said, I just heard a story. True story. Well, it's not a true story. What are you telling us? Anyway, I had a client. He lost one of his key people, I said, and they paid him a bounty, and they were going to give him ownership, and they were going to go public in 3 years, and blah, 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 blah. And I said, and my guy was hurt, and oh man, and he started referring to him. He was a nice guy, as if he had died, you know. And I said, no, he still is a nice guy. And I said, keep up with him. Keep up with him. And sure enough, just in this meeting out here, he told me yesterday, he said, he called me and he wants to come back. Now, I grew up in IBM where when you left, you were done. You could never come back. And that was kind of, as a consultant, my gig for about 10 years. But I've seen so many people leave companies and come back and be absolutely terrific that I've changed my whole philosophy there. So if you've had anybody leave your company that you didn't want to leave, I mean, if you wanted to leave with them, fine. If you didn't, keep up with them. Send them a note. Take them to lunch. Buy them a Dairy Queen. Do whatever it is you do. Do whatever it is you do. Those are recruiting. Let's change the slide. How am I on time? Who's keeping the time? Am I okay? Selection. Okay. Culturally, you have to have, I think it is so important. that everybody in your company says, we only hire the best players. We only hire the best players. And if that's your culture, that changes all the games. How many of you as managers and owners, or you as an owner, have turned to some manager and said, you got 3 open territories. If you don't have those filled by the end of the month, we're going to have a talk. And what have you told that person to go do? You told him to go hire somebody. And the outcome is never to hire somebody. The outcome, and I'm sorry, but the outcome is never to hire
Here he goes.
somebody. The outcome is never to hire somebody. The outcome is to get the right person in the right job with the right relationship. And all that happens when you say to somebody, well, if you don't get your territories filled, I'm going to fire you guys. You know, all that's going to happen is you're going to be having the same conversation in 7 more months, because they're going to hire some people. And I just share with you, my friends, the outcome is to get the right person in the right job. Now, how do you do that? You look at, first of all, you have 3 components of a good hire. The can do. Get yourself a behavioral evaluation. Get a behavioral evaluation. You might not like them, and they're very valid, and they're everywhere. They're on the internet. I used the same company for 38 years, and I had a live body involved, and I thought that was great. But get an evaluation. Now I'm working. For salespeople, when you get one of these can-dos, you want to be sure to check on one thing mainly: aggressiveness, because aggressiveness means control. On service technicians, you want to measure their sociability, because their sociability means they'll fix the customer, not just fix machines. On team fit, you've got to determine that. But on the can-do, you're looking at, for an admin person, you're obviously looking for detail orientation. So why take it? Can-do tells you how comfortable they'll be doing the job. And people do jobs that they're comfortable doing. If you're not comfortable closing somebody, you're not going to close them. So get an instrument that will help you on the can-do. The will-do is the history. My friends, the great interviewers are the ones that know the story of all the people they're interviewing. Tell me your story. The technique that I use, I'm working, I don't know, maybe this is just talking, but here's the question, folks. Take me back to when you got out of high school and bring me up to today. Tell me your story. And they'll tell it to you in about 5 minutes. And then you say, well, no, tell me more about when you were a linebacker in high school and what about that. Tell me more when you went to college and you worked your way down at a bar. Why were you doing that? My friends, I could spend hours on this, but get their story, know their story. And that will tell you their will-do. And either they've been if they haven't been successful, and if they're whining now, folks, that's what they're going to do when they come on board with you. Don't think that your company is so wonderful that when they come with us, they'll be happy. No, they're whiners, they're complainers. They're not successful people. You want to hire successful people. And then the last thing, as far as team, do they have the values and the work ethics that we have? And you don't ask them the question of, or here's the typical, if you come to work for our company, you got to work hard. We work hard around here. Now, do you work hard? Oh, yeah, I want to work hard. It doesn't make any sense. We tell them how to answer our questions. So instead of that, tell me about when you were working at the Dairy Queen. What did you enjoy about it? What didn't you enjoy about it? What kind of time limits did they have on it? How much did you get docked if you weren't on time? All of that type of stuff. You got to know their story. The biggest screw up of interviewers is especially for salespeople, because we're all salesmen ourselves, we talk way too much. Now you hear that in every conference, don't you? You talk too much. And I'm sharing with you, I'm trying to give you the questions to where you can ask them. Tell me, take me back from high school, bring me up to today. What's been a problem for you? You show me somebody that's overcome problems. You show me somebody that's had problems in their life and they've overcome them. I'll show you a winner. And I hate to say this. This is not me really, but you know, in life, there's successful people and there's unsuccessful people. There's winners and there's losers. And I hate to say that because I'm all for giving somebody a second chance. But when I'm running a company, I want to be hiring the winners. I want to be hiring the winners. And I don't hallucinate that I can make the loser. All right. Okay, let's do the next one. Development. All I'm going to say about this, two things. One of them is very important, the other one's just kind of a filler. Overdevelop your people. My observation is we just don't train our people enough. Overdevelop your people. Man and woman power development. Develop them and develop them and develop them. Let me share with you, my friends, the bigger companies that I work with, they have training every Tuesday morning. They have training every Friday morning. They have training locally every Thursday morning. They have people out riding with them and the president and the owners out riding with them. It's development, 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 but there's too much of this going on. Hey man, come in. 3-4 weeks we train them, we give them some training, then we get, if you're Irish Catholic, you always have guilt. So now I've removed the guilt, and I don't feel guilty now. And then I say, basically, here's your phone, here's your desk, here's your phone, lots of luck, you're on your own. Go get them, killer. And then they're not doing anything after 3 or 4 months, and we manage them. In my observation, in the companies that I work with that are really sales machines, most of them, as long as their people are doing activity and have a great attitude and are making some progress, they don't give a rip what their sales are in the first 6 and 7 months. And those are some really successful people that are doing that. So that's what I say about the development. Next one, net change. Okay, measurement. You want to, if for management, you want to have exact measurements. You got to be specific. And then you've got to hold people accountable to that. See, how many seminars have you gone to and they say, you got to have measurements. Got to have measurements. Oh yeah, boy. And then you measure the people. But we forget the second component of that. You got to hold them accountable to that. If they don't make the number, there's a consequence. There's a consequence. And you got to figure that out on your own culture. That's back to your values and your teams. I have some clients that, give them a year before they start doing. I have other ones at 3 months. I mean, it's all, but it's what your culture is. So I'm not telling you what the numbers should be, but measure them, measure everything you can measure. And there's so many, listen to these meetings we've been having here. There's so many things you can measure now, all these analytical. I don't understand half of the things that we were talking about, but I know it's really good. It's good stuff. But it's up to you then to hold them accountable. The technology's not going to hold them accountable. You got to hold them accountable. Oh, that's an interesting thought. I don't know any virtual computer that's going to come out and say, you need to know. Problem solving. Under problem solving, have action plans. And here's the key thing I want. This is another chair moment. Everybody has action plans. Oh yeah, we had a meeting. Yeah, we had an action plan. Oh yeah, hey. And then what happens? Nothing. About a week later, about 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, at the water fountain, they're saying, what's your name? I can't see. Alex. You know, a real neat deal would be to have names on both sides.
Yes. Yes.
That was her having me here. So anyway, you know, I can't remember what I was going to say. That's the aging process.
Not bad.
It doesn't matter. That was. You come up and you say, Alex, have you heard what went on in that meeting? Has anything? No, I thought they probably told you. They haven't told me. So have a feedback loop. And it's so simple. When you end up a meeting and you have a plan, say, we're all going to get together in 1 week or 2 weeks, and then get together. This is called work, folks. This is called work of an executive. Have a feedback loop, and then follow up with them. And you'll be amazed at what you accomplish. Otherwise, they just kind of go away. Let's do the next slide. Okay, motivation is, I love stimulation. I love stimulants. I think they're fun. I think they're exciting. I think that they are productive. You know, let's have a contest. And I'm all for them. However, lasting motivation in a company, lasting motivation is where you understand your people's needs, their wants, their dreams, and you help your people achieve their dreams. And you got to know what the dreams are. And so that means you've got to talk with them and have them share with you. And once you know their dreams and you help people start achieving their dreams, wow, you won't have anybody bitching about it. You know, the problem with stimulants is we come up and we sit around and we think about, oh, we'll all go to Cabo. Oh yeah, hey, Cabo. And then somebody went to Cabo and had water poisoning or something. You know, well, I didn't want to go to Cabo. I wanted to go to Alaska or something. But there's great upsides to stimulants. I love them. But that isn't where true motivation is. True motivation, I'm sorry, you got it. Right here. True motivation is in your gut. True motivation is in your heart. That's where, and getting inside of that heart, and getting inside of that gut, and helping you achieve those. Wow, they'll run through. Whatever happened to the day that you'd say, there's that wall, run through it? What happened to that day? When you were small, it was that way because you knew everything about their families. You knew whose kids were on drugs. You knew whose kids were dyslexic. You knew everything. No, seriously. And they felt like, you know, one of the things. Not bad. That's my trainer. Here's the thing about motivation. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Nobody knows how much you cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And the only way you can care about somebody is to get to know them and to talk to them. And that doesn't mean this is some touchy-feely, oh, Riordan's just a little touchy-feely guy. I can't figure out whether I should touch you or not. I'm not talking about touchy-feely. I'm talking about holding somebody accountable. Remember the previous slide? But it's getting to know what your people want. Okay, let's change the deal. Okay, I'm still okay. Now I'm going to talk about acquisitions and perpetuations. Accusations is how I use it. Accusations. That word up there. Thanks. The attorney up here. Say it again, Bob. Help me out.
Accusations.
Accusations. Wait, attorney has more funny stories.
That attorney. Acquisition.
Acquiring companies. First of all, there's a line that says, it's just as easy to acquire a $7 million company as it is to acquire a $2 million company. Wrong. Doesn't work that way. 7 million, you got 70 employees, you got all these other people, you got their brother-in-law involved, you got, it's tough, it's tougher. Well, 7 million, you might as well buy a 14 million if you're gonna buy a seven. Wrong. The bigger it gets, the more complex it is. And to me, all these formulas and all of these things, I will share with you, and this is a personal thing I've shared with, I had a client call me one time, and it was on a Friday night. My wife and I were going down to a real fancy place called Rudy's, Mexican food. That's the type of guy I am. Big time guy, big mega buck consultant. So anyway, we were going into Rudy's and my phone went off, and I've known my wife since I was 12 years old, so she's got the gig down. And so I answer it, and this guy says, hey, look, I'm looking at we'll just say a dealer in Cincinnati. It wasn't, but we'll just say Cincinnati. And he's about a $2 million guy, and the formulas say, and all the people I've talked to say that it's worth $500,000. That's what the formulas come up. But he wants $700,000. And I'll be damned if I'm going to overpay for the thing. And I said, you know, Ralph, how much money do you think you're going to make on that little dealership over the next 10 years? Well, hey, we hope to run it up to 20 million. I mean, hey. Then what difference does $200,000 make? It makes no difference at all. Pay it. And so I think one of the things that our industry has gotten into is so much of the formula, and we've forgotten how to make a deal. And that's different. I know I've got some mega dealers in the room, and they're at a different level. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But when you're and you go, if you're going to grow, you're probably going to have to acquire. I mean, that's kind of the game. And so really, just remember how to make a deal. And I worked with two brothers in the leasing business for 11 years. And we bought a toilet seat company. And we bought a menu company that printed menus. And we didn't, and these guys were brilliant financial people. One had his MBA from Harvard, and the other one had his MBA from Northwestern Chemical. And I had a 2.6 from K-State. So we were kind of an interesting group. But they would say, look, we'll look at their statements just to be sure that they're not shafting us on some assets and everything. But all we care about is what we're going to make off of it. You know, and we can look at this thing, and we know if we do this, this, and this, we're going to be making X. And for some reason, people don't have that mentality. Now, if Mr. Sheffield or whomever else is here, if they're buying a $40, $50 million company, it's a different game. But in our world, I submit to you that that's the game with acquiring people. Now, I want to share with you. Folks, these are nuggets. I have no ego problem. When you buy somebody, they're going to be with you for about a year and a half. Barry Simon is the only guy that I've worked with in all these years. I've had all these people buy companies that he bought two people, and they've been with him for 15 years or 20 years or whatever it is. Only guy that's pulled it off. And most of you aren't like Barry Simon, okay? But because most of the time, they're going to be gone. They're going to come on. They're not going to buy into your program. So just know, say, okay, I'll give you a 3-year contract, but know that you're going to have to pay that 3-year contract off. You're going to have to pay them off early. And probably the sooner the better. The sooner the better. So that's the whole thing with the acquiring companies. Now I want to talk about perpetuations. Since I quote unquote retired, I apologize. I wanted to mention those 5 processes I mentioned: recruit, select, train, manage, motivate, and manage, motivate, develop. There's a guy in the room, Joe Goodrow. I don't know if any of you have met Joe, but he's sitting in the back, and Barry Simon knows how to get a hold of him. John Cook does. Kirk Studebaker. Anyway, speaking of, looking at Studebaker here just a second. I want to go back to recruiting. I want to go back to recruiting for a minute. When I talked to Kirk, I talked to him, I don't know, quite a bit. No. I talked to Kirk, and Kirk, almost every time I talk to him, he's saying, Mike, I've known this guy for about 3 years, and I've kept up with him, and doggone it, I've got him coming in.
I didn't understand that.
That's recruiting! That's recruiting, folks! That's the way it works. That's the way it works. He's one of the best recruiters that I know. And I'm sorry, I've heard so many people complain about recruiting. Another real quick. I had a client in Canton, Ohio. He lost his dispatcher. Every morning, this was pre-Starbucks, every morning he went by McDonald's and bought a cup of coffee. And he'd go through the drive-thru. And the girl there was just great. She eventually got to know him. And, every morning he was there at 6:45 or something. Here's your cup of coffee, here's your cup of coffee. And he was so impressed because they had those double lines and she was multitasking. And finally he handed her his card and he said, if you ever want to leave McDonald's, give me a call. And about 3 weeks later she called him. This is a true story. You can't make stories up like this. She called him. He interviewed her. He gave her an evaluation. She came back a 7, which would be good. And she came on board and she was his dispatcher for 15 years. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. We're just not out looking for them. We're counting on somebody to give us some names. Yeah. Anyway, Kirk, you're a great recruiter. Now, what made me think of that was on perpetuations, because the Orekios are doing a wonderful, wonderful job of perpetuating their company. And I will say this: if you're under 50 or 55, think about something else, or go to the bathroom and come on back, or something. Think about something else. But if you're getting into that 60 range, you better start thinking about how you're going to perpetuate this company. And one thing that I hated when somebody says, well, what's your exit strategy? What the hell is that, exit strategy? Because you might not exit. But here's some golden rules. If you have a child in the business, then I encourage you to really look and evaluate, is this the person to lead our company? The hardest thing that I've had to do in my career is 6 times I had to sit down with parents. The wife is always involved. And sit down with them and say, hey, you have a couple options. One, you can come back into the company full time instead of going on all of your trips that you go on. And you can come back into your company and run it. 2, you can put your kids in it. And and they can run it, and they'll lose the family jewels. It will be gone. Or you can sell it. Well, I don't want to sell it. Well, then what are you going to do with this? Because your kids are incompetent. That's a very, very hard conversation to have with somebody. But I share with you, my friends, the parents understand it. And if the kids can't, it's not fair to them. It's just, forget you, forget all of your employees, it's not fair to your daughter. It's not fair to your son if they aren't capable of doing it. And what's going to happen is in about 5 years at Thanksgiving dinner, it's going to be so much pressure, and you're not going to be having Thanksgiving dinner together. So I really, but now if your son or your daughter is capable, then I'm going to share with you another tip. I mean, folks, this is magic.
You can touch me then. You got some magic.
I didn't want to spread it around.
Are you clean crowd?
I do. Larry Weiss isn't here, so,
Yeah, no, right.
so we don't have anybody to argue with. Here's the key to perpetuation. You perpetuate your company to your son or your daughter, but you really perpetuate your company to a team, and then the son or the daughter is the head of that team. And you've got to have a team. And I'm going to say the name, one of my greatest joys in life. I love him. I still talk to him all the time. R.J. Young down in Nashville, Tennessee. John Crunk became a client of mine in '89, and I'm going to say we because I was very involved in it. Made Chip the president in 1996, and they were 12 million. And we perpetuated it to primarily John's team, but very quickly, he kept a couple of John's teams forever, but then he brought in his own team. And my friends, they've done very well. Forget how the number, they're a quality company, that's the main thing. And so you've got to surround it, and this is about a 4 to 5 year, 7 year project. If you're thinking of perpetuating the company, you better, and you're 67, 68, you better get on with it. You better start, you and your wife better sit down and figure out what are we going to be doing with the kids? What are we going to be doing? Do we want to bring in a hired gun? Or do we have anybody else in the company? Well, I mentioned one of the most exciting presidents that I say I'm working with. I'm not working with him anymore. It is Kirk. I mean, Kirk is just such a quality guy. And he started out as a sales manager out in St. Cloud, Minnesota. And he made an impression on me. He had all female salespeople. I thought about that during your panel. You know, why don't we have a lot more salespeople that are female? I never understood that. Two of the hottest companies in this industry back in the 80s was Zeno, and then that bunch down in Jackson, Mississippi. All they hired were women, and they killed it. I mean, Fast Freddy sold his company to Erskine House for, I don't know, $8 million and thought it was a big deal. But I don't know. I do know that, well, they can't handle all the testosterone in the bullpen, so let's go and hire women. That's a bunch of nonsense. That's stupid, in my opinion. So anyway, perpetuations. Now, get a plan. Get a plan between you and your spouse first with your values and your goals. Decide if you're going to be bringing the child in or are we going to go outside. but it is a 7-year project. Don't just think it's going to happen. I can share with you I'm looking over at one of the, I work with a group of next generation. We've got about 20 young people that I work with. Blake Renninger's in it. When I first saw him, I met Blake in like 2018, and I thought, oh, he's another cocky little rich boy. And I am so happy. I mentioned to your dad, the perpetuation is going to be great. You and your brother are really, but they're working on it right now. And so start working on it. If you're 50, you don't need to be working on it. You don't need an exit strategy. Well, what if you get hit by a bus? Oh, you're not going to hit it. There aren't buses anymore. They might get cancer, and that might be a problem. So figure out a way to perpetuate you. You know, I've always said that there's the 3 stages. You start the company, and most of us love that time, even though we hated. We worried about it. We had an ulcer. We drank too much. You know, we had our station wagons, and then you build a company, and then the magic is, can you perpetuate it? And the champions perpetuate it. And if you don't perpetuate it, then you haven't had the complete circle. The other thing that I'll say is back in the, by the way, let me see. Okay, I'm okay. I'm going to talk about something that's going to surprise you maybe a little bit, but out of the first 14 companies that Alco Standard bought, 9 of them were my clients. And I stayed on with them, until about 96 or 97, and then some things changed, and I got kicked out. That was fine. But you had that. And then you also had, in 1988, you had Danka show up. And Danny Doyle started. And so, and they would buy these guys, and they bought a lot of people that were in their 40s. You know, just, I don't know how old you all are, but there were a lot of guys there, Frank. A lot of them were in their 40s, maybe early 40s. And they started smoking their big cigars, and they walked around and said, we're going to kick your butt. We're out. And then they went to I Know One Name or something. And what happened in the industry, as I said, this is probably going to surprise you, in the industry, it really got a bad name to sell your business. It really got a bad name because these guys were so arrogant about it, and then they all, they're all still working now because it didn't work out so long. But anyway, my friends, if you don't have an option to perpetuate it, if you don't have somebody, then I would really encourage, and you're tired. Is it really good for your company if you're tired? I mean, everybody says, "Oh, I love this industry. I'm going to die at my desk," or something. But if you're tired, and let me share with you, folks, I'm 77 years old, and 77 is not the new 65. Anybody that says that's full of crap. I mean, that's just not the way it is. But don't you hear people say that? Oh, 70 is the new 60 and all. That's nonsense. But anyway, if you don't, then I would say talk to a mega dealer. Now you can also talk to some other. There's clients that big companies. Some of my clients, a lot of them are buying companies. But there are some quality mega dealers, and I'm not selling that. the one thing I'm going to say to you is never stand up in front of your company and say there's not going to be changes, because there are. It's not your company anymore, period. And there's going to be changes, and so be it. You know, is it better to have some opportunities there than to have you run the thing into the ground because you're tired or you're bored or you're always on a trip and things are out of control? And so I'm real touchy on that. I've had, in my career, I've had 26 companies sell their companies. So I've gone through it a whole lot of times. And I have a lot of companies of mine that are buying companies. And so I've gone through that side of it a lot. And it's a dynamic, gosh, everybody feels about their company just like you feel about yours. It's their next child. And but don't shy away. This is a different time. Those cocky people in their 40s smoking their cigars and drinking their Glenlivets, they were hot shots, and most of them didn't get that much money for their companies. I mean, they really didn't. Most of them got about 8 to 10 million, which is, I hear my mother fainting, saying 8 to 10 million. But it's a different game now, and if it's closing in on you, you got to deal with this. You've got to deal with it. How are you going to perpetuate it? How are you going to acquire, or what are you going to do with it? So those are some of my thoughts. I think that it's pretty tough to bring somebody in from the outside. I know several companies, and I don't want to offend anybody in the room, but a lot of times one of the games they play is, we'll hire somebody that was with Ricoh, or we'll hire somebody that was, it used to be Xerox, but we'll hire somebody from a big company, and they'll come in and they'll teach us how us little guys how to run it. Never works, folks. I won't say never. I mean, I know of one place that it's worked. But it's just a different game. But if you've homegrown, i.e. a Kurt Studebaker, if you've homegrown the person, then you got a shot at it. Kind of a heavy thing to talk about. But so let's knock the thing on. And I guess about 5 or 10 minutes. I started about 7 minutes late, so I want to talk a little, share some things with you. Right now, and I know it's not breaking any confidence because about everybody in the room knows it. I'm a sad person because John Lowry's wife Sandy has passed away, and she had pancreatic cancer when she was 67 years old. Beautiful lady, beautiful marriage, great people. John's just the greatest. In life, you were JD Young?
Yep.
Yeah. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
I used to do leasing with you guys back in the 70s. But, man, we're talking about a guy that's ADD, Anyway, I want to tell a story, and I'm never sure. I spoke, really, the only place that I speak at anymore. I am going to talk the BTA down in the Southeast District. First time I was ever spoken at a BTA. In 40 years, I've only spoken 12 times to a big group like this. But Blake Renninger asked me to do it, so I said I would do it. But the only other people that I ever speak at is Great America, because I think they're one of, if not the finest company in America. I think they do something. But I'll speak there now. They probably wouldn't invite me again. But anyway, and at that story, I told a story about my father. But I'm not going to tell that story. I'm going to tell a story about my mom. And there's a punchline to this. Okay, this isn't a sad story. This is when my dad was 41 years old when he died. He had lung cancer. LSMFT, Lucky Strike, means fine tobacco. And he smoked about 3 to 4 packs a day. He was a traveling salesman for a little 51. He died on July 21st, 1955. Actually, yesterday was a memorable day for me. I always call my brothers on it because on January 16th, 1955, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. And then he died approximately 7 months later. And Dad was really a good-looking guy. I mean, he was 5'10", had premature gray hair, bright blue eyes. I don't know what the hell happened. But Dad was a good-looking guy and a great athlete. He was Sacred Heart High School's captain of their state championship. He went to the National American Legion Baseball. He was the captain of that team. But he had never been sick a day in his life. So he had no insurance. And he died in July. My mom was 39 at the time. My older brother Bob was 13. I was 10 by 3 days. My brother John was 2. My brother Danny was 8 months. And Mom got us, my brother Bob and I, together. We had, she said, we got $58.65. She says, here's what we're going to do. She had a plan. I respect my mom. She says, Bob, you're really smart. And he was. He went to the Naval Academy. She says, you're really smart, so I'll have you help me. I've got to get a college degree. She had no degrees. And I need you to help me with math. So Michael, sorry, I was calling you Michael, you're not as smart as you are. I said, but you know how to make money. So you'll go out and collect pop bottles. And some of you are old enough to remember when you get a pop bottle and you jump it, you get a nickel for it. And so we got a plan, and Mom lived out her life. And she was a teacher, and then she became a house mother at KU. I didn't speak to her for about 10 years. And then she lived to be 3 days short of 92. And my mom, she had pneumonia, and the doctor said, we can keep you alive, or we can call in hospice. And my mom said, well, I'm going to interview the hospice people. She interviewed 3 different hospitals, and picked one. She said, if I don't have to suffer, I'm going to call it a day. She said, Michael, what do you think? I said, oh. So, the last thing my mom said, now think of the life. 39 years old with 4 little boys. My mom never made more than $10,000. And the last words my mom said was, tell your brother, all my brothers lived out of town, tell your brothers that I've had a wonderful life and I love them. That was her final words. And she went to sleep. 10 days later, she died, and we took her out to Salina. We were living in Kansas City. We took her out to be buried next to my dad. And we got out there, and we had announced in the Salina Journal that there was going to be a service. And I thought there might be 5 or 6 people. She's 92 years old. We pull up, and there's about 75 people, almost 100 people wandering around this grave. And I thought, wow, what is this? So they go in, if any of you are Catholic, Catholics really know how to bury him. We get there and we turn the deal and it drops a little bit, and then afterwards I started walking around to people and I said, how'd you know my mom? Oh, your mom taught me kindergarten. And I'd see her around Salina, and she always would ask me how I am. Oh, hey, how'd you know my mom? Oh, your mom taught me kindergarten. She was the greatest teacher I ever had, and I'd see her around Salina. She'd always say hi and ask me how my family was. How'd you know my mom? Oh, I know your mom. She taught me kindergarten. On and on and on. Now, why do I tell that story? I tell it for a couple of reasons. One, my mom overcame a lot of odds. And we're sitting here thinking we all have problems. I mean, all the shipping problems and all the things. Folks, that's the way life is. That's the way life is. There's just going to be problems, and the people that survive in life and are happy are the ones that solve it. And my mom solved problems. She had 4 little boys, and every one of them graduated from college. Well, 3 of us did, and one of them went to KU. But she solved problems. And that's what, I mean, sometimes it breaks my heart when I see people worrying so much. And I'm not discounting them. But man, get in and solve the problem. I mean, come on. Don't go home and drink more and swear and cuss at somebody. Just figure out how to solve it. Just how to solve it. And the other reason I tell the story is work. There is honor in work. Work is noble. Work is noble. And my mom worked. She was a great teacher. At 75, at age 92, she had almost 100 people coming because she did her work well. And it makes me think, I wonder how many people will be there when I put into the ground, and they'll say, oh, Mike really helped me or whatever. And I think work takes a bad rap these days. I think people make excuses for work. People talk about retirement. Work's noble, work's fun. If you're the right person in the right job. So I dedicate this whole afternoon to my mom. And I can tell you that I had terrible speech impediments when I was little. My mom went down and we borrowed $100 and I took speech lessons. And my mom solved problems. And she died in 2007. And I share my mom with all of you as an example of somebody that solved problems and had work that's noble. And that's my prayer and my hope for all of you, that you solve problems and that you realize that your work is noble. And that's it. Thanks, everybody.